Hello and welcome to MaritimeInnovations.com. I'm Joachim, and today we're diving into a topic that is shaking up the maritime world. GPS disruptions are threatening shipping, trade, and safety. In a moment, I'll be talking to someone who's found a solution. But first, what's actually happening at sea? GPS disruptions are escalating from a mere annoyance to a serious threat, endangering global shipping, naval defense, and emergency response at sea. Just last week, vessels in the Strait of Hormuz reported GPS failures, forcing crews to rely on backup navigation in one of the world's busiest and most volatile shipping lanes. In the Black Sea, ships have broadcast false positions due to spoofing, while jamming incidents spike across conflict zones. When GPS fails at sea, the stakes are high. Disrupted trade routes, compromised safety, even potential collisions. For Josh Burton, the founder and CEO of MSRS Navigation, GPS denial wasn't just a news headline, it was a life-or-death reality on the battlefield. As a special operations soldier, he saw firsthand how losing navigation in hostile environments could mean the difference between success and disaster. Instead of accepting this risk, he decided to find a solution, and that's how MSRS was born. Originally designed to keep ground forces moving through GPS-denied areas, MSRS breakthrough technology quickly caught the attention of an industry facing the same urgent challenge: maritime shipping, where the demand for reliable navigation backups is urgent and growing. Where GPS fails at sea, MSRS steps up. Josh, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Let's start with a spark. Take us back to that moment when you realized that GPS denial wasn't just a military headache, but a global challenge, hitting everything from special ops to the ships that keeps our world moving. And while you're at it, tell us about MSRS, who is driving the mission, and what expertise does your team bring to tackle this maritime problem?
Yeah, so I'm Josh Burton, the CEO and founder of MSRS. As you mentioned, I experienced jamming on the battlefield back in my previous career as a special operations ground soldier. Initially, my team was one of the first people on the ground in Syria in the fight against ISIS back in early 2015. And as you may or may not know, there was also Russians out there on the battlefield supporting some of the Syrians. So not only was it a very convoluted war, but we as the American presence on the ground were being jammed by the Russians. So that was the first time I experienced it and kind of knew we had a problem back then. And then a few years later, I retired and sought out to make a solution for this problem. And that's where we're at today.
GPS is the backbone of modern navigation, yet we're seeing an increased number of jamming and spoofing incidents. What are the biggest risks you see this poses for maritime operations?
Yeah, so, talking with a lot of people that work in the labs and have dealt with GPS jamming, it's actually been around a long time. It really has. And I think the evolution of technology and the fact that jammers have become more widely known and a very useful tool in TTP for the enemy to use against us, not only on the ground, but on the water. We're starting to see it worldwide more and more every day. We have trackers online that you can see where jamming's occurring. It's definitely become a big problem on the water as well, and that's why we're moving into that market. We don't quite always understand why they're jamming commercial ships or just regular ships out on the water, other than to cause disruption and maybe financial impact to countries. China ships a ton of stuff all over the world, and that's kind of the area where we're seeing a lot of the jamming happening. So it's definitely disrupting. It's costing these large shipping companies such as Maersk and others a lot of lost time, fuel, money, and just efficiency overall. There has been a few accidents. But that is obviously a worst case scenario is you run a 300-meter cargo ship aground somewhere because it's nighttime and it doesn't have navigation. Um, so that's the last thing we want, and that's what we're setting out to solve.
How have you seen this problem evolve in recent years? Are there particular regions or other industries most affected?
Yeah, I would say it's, as I mentioned, it's evolving every day. The technology's become cheaper. People are figuring it out. Everybody knows that, developed countries, especially the US, and most of Europe, everything we do relies on GPS. So they've cheaply and quickly figured out how to disrupt that GPS signal. Um, how we've seen it evolve is, everything from the Mexican cartel is using jamming down here on the border to smuggle people and drugs against the border patrol. They're also using it on boats and maritime to go around California and San Diego up into Orange County at the very large port we have there. So that's fairly recent in the last couple of years, but we're not only is it recent, but we're also seeing more and more of it every day. So that's just one instance. Obviously, when Israel, after October 7th, the war kicked off over there, Israel jammed their own country, mainly the entire country, and that was just to protect themselves against missile attacks and drones and other things that rely on GPS. We've seen it all over Ukraine for 2.5 years now. Uh, Last year, we saw China jam the entire country of Taiwan for a week straight. It was just one big red blurb on the map. So, those are just a few examples I'm giving you right now, but I think everybody's in the same page that it is becoming a problem, and we need to look at other methods outside of GPS satellite signals.
MSRS brings a fresh angle to the problem. Can you walk us through how your system keeps ship on course when GPS goes dark?
Yeah, I think it goes back to how we develop the ground system. And in a nutshell, we're taking the technology that we developed from the ground system and the same concept, and we're moving it over to the maritime and the boat system. Our technology is based off of uh, current technology. We didn't try to reinvent the wheel or come up with this magic science project. What we're doing essentially is utilizing tools that we already had in our toolbox. Uh, in the fact that with our ground system, we just basically took old school dead reckoning land navigation and we digitized it and computerized it. So instead of a guy on the ground having to read a map and compass and be accurate with that, as well as his pace count for the velocity piece of it, we computerized all that. So it takes all the error and the guesswork out of it. And there's some other novel things we're doing as well. I don't want to make it sound like it's that simple, but end of the day, we didn't reinvent the wheel here. We're just utilizing tools that are readily available to us. And we're doing the same thing on the maritime side. So we took our algorithm and our architecture, of our software system that we used on the ground side, carry that over to the maritime side, and really all we have is different data inputs and different sensors. We're utilizing the depth and radars and different ways to get speed off the boat, and we're taking wind into accountability and a few other things that you can imagine you would have to be on the water, such as current. That's current really is the biggest difference between the ground and the water system, is the fact that you have to adapt to that and be able to read it and correct for it.
How does your GPS denied navigation technology integrate with Heffinger Marines IMAS system?
Great question. So we connected with Heffering and partnered with them on this project because the IMAS system really does a lot of the front end work and the calculations and data inputs that we were going to have to do anyways to pull data into our system, into our software to refine that location. They have a very robust system. It's great. It just doesn't do the navigation piece yet. It will here shortly with our help. Um, But yeah, they did a lot of the front end work. Like I said, we were going to have to do. However, there's still a few missing pieces of that equation, and that's essentially what we're working on now. So it's not exactly plug and play. Like we can't just throw our software onto their system and it works. Um, but it probably put us a good, I'd say 18 months, 12 to 18 months ahead of where we would have been if we had not partnered with them. So, they're great. They're a great company. They have a great product. We have a great relationship with them, and looking forward to working with Heffering for many years to come.
For someone not deeply involved in navigation technology, how would you explain what makes this solution different?
So think of your phone or your GPS in your car. Um, at all times, every second, every millisecond, it's getting a GPS signal from multiple GPSs in your area. And that's basically what's triangulating, updating your area. It's also using cell towers to some extent. Um, so think of being able to navigate without any of those signals coming in. And our system is what we call non-RF. So it has no radio frequencies, no GPS signals. So that's why you can't jam our system. That's the beauty of it. However, we don't get that all the time, accurate GPS update. Ours is more reliant on sensors that are in place and locally right there with you with the system. So that's the big difference right there. And the big reason for that is we feel that any signal can be jammed. Number one, with enough power, the technology's out there. A lot of people have moved to encrypted type signals with a stronger antenna. We won't get into that too much, but just the overall picture here. Um, I I think that's great, but I think it also has its downfalls for a couple reasons. Like I said, I think anything can be jammed with enough power, but also, some of our near peer adversaries have already proven and shown that they are capable and willing to shoot satellites out of the sky. They can do it with missiles, medium range missiles. They can fry the satellites out with very high energy laser beams. And then, the third method that they've shown is they've also put other satellites up in the sky near the constellations that are loaded with munitions. So if they just blow a couple of those up, now we have a bunch of space junk crashing into our satellites. They're not going to work. So end of the day, we don't feel like satellite is a good backup, encrypted or not. Um, so that's why we built a completely non-RF system that doesn't rely on any sort of satellite signal.
May I ask, where's the MSRS system currently being tested or deployed?
We are in a handful of different conflict and combat zones. I'll let you guess where those are currently without saying anything. But we're also deployed worldwide with multiple special operations units, US and international, um, as well as other military units out there. Um, we're also doing some work with a couple racing teams on the commercial side, guys that do like Baja races, and some fairly big companies. I don't think I should probably name names at this point, but yeah, so we consider ourselves a dual use technology, and we're really just tapping into that commercial side on the ground system. However, on the maritime system later this year, when that's ready, we already have customers lined up, and some of the larger shipping companies are waiting for us, and they're on board with it. So I think this is going to be a really great, affordable, low cost technology. That's the other side of it is we have to be affordable. We can't just charge a crazy price for this and then nobody can afford to put it on their ships or their cars or vehicles. That's been our goal all along is to keep this low cost as possible, because we want to be on every military vehicle out there, every application we can be on, and really, change the market and try to get away from GPS, or at least be a really good backup to GPS. Even when you're not jammed and spoofed, there's a lot of areas here in the US that GPS just doesn't have coverage that great. And we've all seen it when you're driving down the highway, and next thing you know, your map's telling you you're off in the desert like a quarter mile away. I think everybody's experienced that. So with our system, it'll put you right where you're supposed to be all the time, and um, hopefully alleviate some risk in the end, people getting lost or injured. But yeah, we know on the maritime side it's much needed. Talking with a lot of the larger companies, they might have two consoles. The captain will have two consoles of Garmin or Furuno, whatever they're using, um, up on the deck. But if those go out, everybody on the ship panics. And the only thing they really have now, and especially since this problem's proliferating, is they're going back to teach their guys celestial navigation. And that's a problem because you can really only do that on a good night when there's no cloud cover, and you got to break out the sextant, and there's other technologies out there that we're very well aware of. That some very few people can afford. We're talking multi-million dollar systems that can do the same thing we're doing, but they're not going on very many ships. And that's our goal, is to get, again, be affordable and go on every ship. So we can do better than giving a 300-meter ship captain a better backup than a sextant at night, that he might be able to only use 1 or 2 nights a week, depending on the weather. So that's our goal with that.
Without disclosing too much, of course, but are there any real-world examples of how it has helped maintain navigation integrity?
Yeah, there's this one particular country and customer. Again, I can't get too specific here, but they were driving up to the border to meet up with some of the local forces, what we call a link up, and their GPS was jammed the whole time. And I talked to the guys after they got back from this deployment, and they said without our system, they never would have made it to the link up, because it was just 50 kilometers of driving, a lot of turns, and the only other thing they would have had is a map to use. And there was a really good chance they could have drove straight over the border that wasn't marked into enemy territory. So they were very thankful for our system, and it helped them out.
What would you say, which sectors stand to benefit the most? Is it the commercial shipping, defense sector, offshore operations?
To be honest with you, because I think they're all going to benefit from it equally. We are talking with a lot of the naval, Coast Guard, multiple countries at this point, on the maritime side and the ground side. So I think it's equally beneficial across all those markets and sectors.
What are the next steps for MSRS? Product development, partnerships, commercial rollout, maybe?
Yeah, so we actually just partner with a couple primes. Again, I don't think I'm at liberty here to name names, but two of the large U.S. and international defense primes on the ground system. I think everybody's kind of sitting and waiting back to see how well the maritime system works here later this summer, as well as we are. We're still undergoing testing on that and validation. So I don't want to say too much about it, but we're making really good progress, and it's looking very promising. But as far as other partnerships, yes, we do continue to expand and scale as a company, and very positive growth. I think this is going to be a huge year for us. We're participating in a handful of very large U.S. government projects and a couple internationally as well. So it's going to be an exciting year for us. We're doing everything we can to keep up at this point.
Josh, where do you see the future of GPS-denied navigation heading? Will this become an industry standard?
I believe so. And, it goes back to my thought process on really the tiered approach, and I think that's kind of where everybody's head is moving now in their methodology. If you got good GPS, use it. If you don't, maybe encrypted GPS is the first layer of that. And then, MSRS would be the next layer to it when there is absolutely no GPS or no satellites. Um, in a lot of cases, when you know, you don't want to spend the money on the encrypted solution because it is pretty robust and expensive. MSRS type non-RF denied GPS navigation solution is just as good as an option, in my opinion.
For companies concerned about GPS vulnerabilities, what should they be doing today to prepare?
I don't know that there's a lot that commercial companies can actually do until there's more solutions on the market. We all know that our daily lives rely on GPS, everything from logistics to just taking your kid across town or traveling anywhere, all the airplanes and boats. Um, I think the best thing we can do is make sure that the people driving the ships and flying the planes and all that stuff is really kind of going back to old school. What did we do before we had GPS, right? You need to learn to be able to read a map first, use a compass. And then, a lot of pilots, they're trained to fly VFR, uh, but how many of them still actually practice it and do it? And it's no different than soldiers doing land navigation. Um, when I came in the Army over 30 years ago, we did that a lot. And then shortly after that time, we started to get GPS systems and use them. And then it turned into that's all we used. And kind of the land navigation art and skill was, I don't want to say lost, but just put to the back burner. So as far as people preparing themselves for disruptions and GPS, I think that's probably the first step is we can get back to those hard skills and at least be somewhat effective at them.
Maritime cybersecurity is a hot topic. Does your solution also protect against spoofing attacks that could trick a ship's AIS system?
Yeah, we're not too connected on the communication side because anytime we do stuff like that or integrate into the RF signals, then we open up the system to vulnerabilities for jamming and spoofing itself. So we like to think of our system as completely separate from all the other moving pieces and technology on the boat, and we kind of have to keep it that way. However, that's not to say that we couldn't take a look at that and possibly help out with that in the future. But we haven't really dove into that yet.
One question I think our audience would love to know, what's the installation process like for a shipping company? Is this something retrofitted to an existing fleet or built into new vessels?
No, that's a great question. So you have to, again, you kind of have to think about this as a tiered solution. We might go onto some vessels and they don't have anything, right? So we'll install the IMAS system with the IMAS Plus with the MSRS on it. In order for the navigation piece to work properly, there is a handful of sensors that we need, um, such as radar, depth finder, and a couple other small things. So if the ship doesn't have it, we're going to bring those as part of the package. If it already has that stuff, like most ships do, we're going to tap into those sensors and we're going to pull the data into our software and utilize what's already on board. This also brings the cost down quite a bit to the customer because they don't need redundant sensors. We'll just utilize what's there already.
For smaller operators, say fishing fleets, coastal ferries, how scalable or affordable is your tech compared to big shipping firms?
The sensor package that they need, because that can really vary the cost by thousands of dollars. But end of the day, you know, the only caveat to this is some of the larger shipping systems, and we haven't tested this out yet fully, but some of the larger vessels, the cargo ships, they may need to put two of our systems on board. Just because, they're 900 feet plus long, 300 meters. But that's yet to be determined versus, you might be talking about a 20-meter fishing boat or whatever. End of the day, like our prices are going to remain the same across the board. But again, we're not going to charge a shipping company more for a system than we are a fishing boat. That's out of the question. But end of the day, it really comes down to what sensors we need to include to make the system work.
How does MSRS handle the unique challenge of Arctic shipping, where GPS signals are already spotted due to satellite geometry?
We've done some Arctic testing on the ground, and obviously you can see the differences in the compasses and the offsets. With our system being software-based solution, I don't think it's going to be a major concern. Obviously, like GPS is up there, but I don't know if that's just due to lack of coverage, or if it really is truly a signal disruption. We have not tested anything on the water yet in that region, so I don't know that I can give you a really good answer on that at this time.
Josh, boil it down for us. What's the one thing that you want our audience to take away from this?
Yeah, I just, number one, don't always rely on GPS. It's not all it's cracked up to be. And I'm sure most of you have seen that in your own experiences. Like I mentioned, just driving down the road, it's also really bad in heavy urban areas such as big cities. I'm in New York all the time, and I don't know my way around there, so I always pull my phone app out, and it's funny because I always have to check the cross streets because my GPS has me like 3 blocks away from where I'm really at. But at least I got a map there and I can figure my way around. But I don't trust GPS. The other thing, I just want people to know that, we are working on other solutions, and we have a solution for your vehicle right now that doesn't rely on GPS. And it just, takes some out of the box thinking and smart people. I personally had the idea, and I was lucky enough to find some smart people to surround myself with to actually implement it. It's the old saying, you don't always want to be or have to be the smartest person in the room. So if you have ideas about stuff, you should chase them down. Things work out once in a while.
Josh, thank you so much for joining us today. Your journey from the battlefield to safeguarding our seas, this is nothing short of inspiring. The way MSRS and your technology is stepping up to tackle GPS denial isn't just a technical fix. I think it's a game changer for maritime safety and resilience. I found this story fascinating, and I'm sure our audience has too. Here's to safe navigation from now on, no matter what signals get thrown our way. For everyone watching, check out MSRS Navigation, link in the article or below to learn more. And thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.